If you're 100% natural, you've never done HRT, you're not doing any of these things, then skip to my next video and watch that one. This one is for people who actually use performance-enhancing drugs. Coach Greg, in today's video, we're going to be going over how people inject their TRT. And so before I get canceled, before this gets demonetized, I want to point out, I am not a doctor. This is for educational purposes only. Go and see your own doctor and let them tell you how to do it. But I'm going to be going over Kenny KO, who made a video explaining exactly how to do this. If you're 100% natural, you've never done HRT, you're not doing any of these things, then skip to my next video and watch that one. This one is for people who actually use performance-enhancing drugs. Don't do anything illegal, never break the law. This is for people who are actually using it. Remember, I have a prescription from my doctor, my endocrinologist, and so it's 100% legal. Don't demonetize this. If you're a bot listening to me speak right now, this is 100% legal for me to talk about.
How to inject your TRT. This video is all for informational and educational purposes only. You are going to need your syringe, which will be drawing up your oil of whatever prescription you have.
And so there's a difference between a syringe and a needle. People often get this confused. They're two separate things. The needle is the sharp part, the metal, the part that goes into your skin. And the syringe is the part that keeps in the fluid. Syringes can vary in size. This one is only 1 cc. 1 cc. Most of them that you see around are 3 cc, but they also have 5, 10, 20, 30, 60. But typically, people are going to use either a 1 cc syringe or a 3 cc syringe. And cc's, 1 cc is 1 ml, 3 cc's is 3 mLs. Remember, we're trying to learn about this. Many of you don't understand this. And so what you need is 2 separate needles. The first needle is the part that sticks into the vial. This is my vial. It has my name on it. It's my prescription. It's 5 mLs and it's dosed at 200 milligrams per ml. And so what that means is for each ml or cc, there's 200 milligrams of testosterone in it. Let's do some quick math. If I do 1 cc, it's going to have 200 milligrams. If I do a half of a cc, it's going to have 100 milligrams. That's half of 200 is 100. Gonna get harder. Do 0.1 of a cc, 0.1 of ml. That's 10% of it. On this needle, it's only this much. Only that much, hardly any. If I do 0.1, it's going to be 0.1 times 200. It's 20 milligrams of testosterone. And so because I'm doing 140 milligrams a week, that equals to 20 milligrams per day. 140 divided by 7 is 20. And so I'm doing my shots currently every 4 days. And so if I do 20 milligrams per day and I do it every 4 days, I go 20 times 4 and it makes 80. And so what I have to do is I pull this up to 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4. And so on this syringe, I do 0.4, which is almost half. It's 1 cc. The reason I use the 1 cc syringe as opposed to 3 cc is because the 3 cc is a lot thicker and it's hard to measure accurately. You barely point it out. And so it'd be very hard to measure if you're doing, for example, 0.35 or 0.45. You wouldn't know quite exactly how much you're doing. And so for HRT, I recommend you do the smallest syringe possible. What you do is you open up your package and you do not touch that part right there. Your hands, you've obviously washed your hands. You're doing this in a sterile environment. And what you're going to do is place this on your syringe. This is a twist top. You can have different tops. This one twists on. I like the twist on. You can have one press on. Various ones. It's up to you. And so this is a 20 gauge needle that I use for drawing the fluid in. I would stick it inside the vial and pull it out until it gets to 0.4.
Here I have a 20 gauge needle.
Well, Kenny KO says you should use a 16 or 18 gauge needle. Now, all you need to remember is the lower the number, the thicker it is. And so 16 is very thick. If you look at a 16 gauge needle and you say you're going to inject it into your body, you're probably going to think, no way am I putting that in my body. And so you aren't. You're using it to draw in the fluids from the vial. Now, Kenny says to use 16 or 18. I highly discourage you from using that. I much prefer use a higher number, 20, 21, or 22. That's what I recommend. And the reason for that is it's a thinner needle. When it's a 16 gauge, it's very thick. You stick this into the rubber stopper and it's very, very sharp and it can cut off some of the rubber. You end up with rubber floating around inside the vial, and it's happened to me. And so imagine this, you put in the needle and you suck in a rubber stopper, you put that into your shoulder and you press it in. You now have a rubber stopper inside of your body. And so if you don't want that, you need to be very careful. And so the higher the gauge, for example, 20, 21, 22, the less likely that rubber stopper is going to get broken off and get into your body. Now the con to this is the higher the number, the skinnier the needle is, and therefore the fluid is going to take longer to get through it. You perhaps can't pull it out in 1 second. You might have to take 10 seconds to get it out. But to me, 10 seconds when you're doing these kinds of things, it's worth taking your time.
Think of your gauges as if it's a shotgun. So the lower the gauge, the bigger the diameter of the needle is going to be. For drying up, you're going to want a lower gauge. So 16, 18, 20. For the actual injection portion, you're going to want a higher gauge needle. I use a 25, and it also depends where you are going to be injecting.
After that, you're going to twist this part off and you're going to replace it with a brand new fresh needle, one of a higher number. The reason for that is once this needle has pierced through the rubber stopper, it's now dull. It won't appear dull, but if you had a magnifying glass and you looked at it, it's no longer as sharp as it once was. And so you always want to have a fresh, sharp needle to use your injections. The reason is the sharper it is, the easier it's going to go through. It's going to be less painful, less scarring. And so very important not to reuse that same needle. And second of all, do you really want to inject with a 20 gauge needle, or as Kenny uses 18 or 16? That's a very thick needle. It's going to make it bleed. It's going to be painful. And so why would anyone want to do that? And so Kenny says he suggests using a 25 gauge needle, 1 inch in length. And he uses that for his glutes. Now, I'm telling you, you want to use a longer needle. 25 gauge does in fact work. I personally use 27 for my HRT injection, but if you're doing larger shots, for example, back in the day, I would inject 3 cc's at one single time. And if I use a 27 gauge, I'd be pressing for 3 minutes. It takes too long. And so the 27 gauge, it's still going to take me 20 seconds or so, but I'd rather use a smaller needle because it has less scar tissue. It does take longer, but it's less painful and has less scar tissue. And so I would highly recommend that. Now, he mentions you want to use a shorter needle for your delt.
If you're going in your delts, you don't want a longer needle, so then there's also going to be the length. I use a 1 inch 25 gauge for the actual injection portion, which I put in my glute.
Last I checked, if you don't have 1 inch of muscle in your delt, you better be going to train shoulders harder than last time. The needles I'm using are 1¼ inches length, and I have hardly any body fat, and I'm telling you, if it went in 2 inches, 3 inches, I'm not hitting bone. There's a lot of muscle in there. And so if you think you need a smaller needle than 1 inch in length for your delts, then you have the world's smallest delts. Almost everyone, even women, even children, can inject 1 inch into their delts. And as far as the glutes go, 1 inch is often not enough. And I'm not talking about sexy time. I'm not talking about getting harder than last time. But if you are trying to get harder than last time, trying to get that extra inch, I recommend harder than last time. And you know exactly what it's for. And if you're not on HRT and you want to increase your test levels, of course you can try G test or 3 test. You know what it's for. Code Greg, 15% off. Click the link in the description. And so if you're only using a 1 inch needle into your glutes, remember the glutes carry a lot of body fat. I don't care if you're a male or a female, the glutes oftentimes have a lot of body fat. If you're on your bulk and you're using these things, you might have 1 inch of fat on its own. And so how are you expecting that needle to get into the muscle if you're only using a 1 inch needle? You have 1 inch of fat to get through. And so to me, longer is better and thinner is better. Sounds a little sus, but we're talking about needles here. Longer and thinner is going to go deeper. It's going to cause less scarring, less pain. And so that is what I recommend. I would suggest use a 1.5 or 1.5 inch needle for use of your glutes, and 25 gauge, that in fact should be fine. 27, if you're doing 3 cc, is going to take a long time. But if you are doing very small shots, you're on HRT, a 1/2 cc, for example, no problem with 27 gauge. And remember, if you're doing your delts 1 1 inch, that should be fine, but I wouldn't go shorter than that. I have in fact used 5-8 inches in the past, and even with having low body fat levels, I feel like it doesn't go in deep enough. Sometimes you'll inject the oil, you'll pull the needle out, and you'll feel some of the oil trickle out. What I like to do is the Z-track method. You actually pull on the skin to the side, do the injection right there while the skin is pulled, and once it's retrieved, you can then let go of the skin and the skin will block it. Just consider this, if your skin is being pulled apart and the injection is done right here, and the skin is then released and it covers it, the skin is going to give an extra layer. But if you put a pole right through and pull it out, there's going to be a gaping hole that the fluid can leak out of. And so why would you want to waste your HRT dose? And so doing the Z-track method, I'd highly recommend. Remember, you don't automatically have to do it in your deltoids. The doctor might tell you to do it in your glutes. Perhaps they even tell you to do it in your thighs. Not a fan of the thighs. It is easier, but it's very uncomfortable for me.
As I mentioned, here we have the 20 gauge syringe, 100 milligrams, which is going to be a half cc underneath. Push the air in. This is going to help you create some suction, pull it out, and make the draw a little bit easier.
And he brings up a good point. You want to push some air into the vial before you start pulling because that increases the pressure within the bottle, making the fluid more likely to push itself into the syringe.
Pull the needle out. You don't want to waste, of course, any of the goods that are there. Pull the syringe back ever so slightly. Pull everything back into the chamber there. Cap the needle. Dispose of everything properly. Hazard, sharp containers. This is the actual injection one, depending where you're doing it. I recommend a 1 inch 25 gauge on the glutes. You attach that on the top. Expel all the air that is in there because you don't want any air being injected in.
And so you notice he's tapping the needle. He's pushed this syringe back. That is to get rid of all the air. You don't want to inject the air into your body. This is bad, especially if you were to hit an artery or a vein. This is not good. And remember, this video is not about telling you what to do without consulting your doctor. This is for educational purposes only.
Put a little drop through the tip just to run down the base of the needle. That way it helps lubricate a little bit.
And so I'm not a fan of lubricating the needle. It's a 25 gauge. It's going to go in easier than last time. But you do want to push the needle up until you can see some fluid going through, because if not, there could in fact be air in the needle.
And then you are ready for your injection.
Now that you're ready for injection, it's extremely important to use an alcohol swab. An alcohol swab inside, this is going to kill the bacteria in your skin. If you don't use this, it's very, very dangerous. You could get an infection, a staph infection. You could get bacteria moving inside your skin, and you could, in fact, need an operation. Very dangerous. And so what you will do is wipe away in circles to remove the excess bacteria. You can wait a few seconds, let it dry, and at this point, you're ready to do your injection. You push the needle all the way through and you press the needle until the fluid's completely injected. The doctor is going to recommend that you pull back on the needle to see if it's inside of a vein. If you pull back and you see blood coming back in, then that is not where you want to inject. Once you remove the needle, you're going to then have to properly dispose of your needle. And remember this, there is approximately 0.1 or perhaps even more testosterone or whatever fluid's left inside the needle. This needle itself, especially if you're using a thicker gauge, for example, if you're injecting with a 23 gauge, it's thicker and so it holds more fluid. And remember, there's nothing you can do about this, but there's going to be waste, there's residual testosterone left in this needle. You can't use that. And so you're going to be throwing away perhaps 10% of the product that you're using. And so if you bought a 10 cc syringe thinking you're going to have 10 shots of 1 cc, you might be surprised that after 9 shots, there's none left. And why is that? Because there's some left over in the needle. And so hopefully this video helped. Many of you are wondering, how do people do TRT injections? How do they inject performance enhancing drugs? This is a general guide of what you need to know if you are going to do it. Now remember, I'm not telling anyone to use performance enhancing drugs. I'm in fact saying don't do it. If you do in fact need it and your doctor prescribes it, then of course, listen to your doctor. Do not listen to me. Listen to your doctor. I don't care what I say. Don't listen to anything I say. I'm just a 5'6" man. Don't take me serious. I just make jokes and I'm having a good time. Your doctor, that is who you need to listen to. Never break the law. If anyone suggests you break the law, tell them to go shove it. Do not listen to them. And Am I making myself clear? And so please, YouTube channel people, don't delete this video. It's for educational purposes only. I'm not telling anyone to inject testosterone. I'm not telling them they should do it like this. I'm telling them this is how many people do it. They shouldn't do it themselves. They should go and see their doctor and find out exactly what to do. If you want to remain natural, hopefully you're still natty, you can use natty supplements. For example, Ecdy Builder and Turk Builder. Various Ecdy steroids have been shown in the literature to help you build muscle, train harder than last time, and so on. We also have GO2 Max for increased cardiovascular performance, greater endurance. Remember, this has NMN. If you're interested in any of these things, as well as the cookbooks, the training books, the Circle Diet book, all these are on my website, and if you use code Greg, you'll get 15% off. Become one of the 3,000 plus newsletter subscribers, and if you're interested, you can get the free diet and training program. It's close to 50 pages. Any questions, add them below. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the algorithm. Don't forget to like this video if you liked. If you want more videos like this, please mention in the comment section. Watch one of those 2 bloops. And for coaching plans by me and my team, the Harder Than Last Time clothing line, tank tops, hoodies, and so on, please head to the website. And until next time, I am out.